Sweat trickled down Diego's 29 personal trainer and lifestyle influencer. Athletic and charismatic, with an easy smile that hid an analytical mind forehead as his biceps flexed with each repetition. The electronic music thumped through the loudspeakers of the bustling Iron Core gym in Santa Monica, California, and the hum of conversations and clinking weights filled the air. Diego was in the prime of his functional training live stream, his eyes fixed on the camera, interacting with hundreds of followers. Suddenly, a translucent shadow flickered on the screen, not from the recording equipment, but in his peripheral vision, like a glitch in reality itself. A strong electrical pulse hit him, and the sound of steel cables snapping, muffled by his headphones, transformed into a deafening shriek in his mind. The gym, a second before vibrant and full of life, became a silent stage of horrors. Treadmills abruptly halted, and weight machines seemed to come alive, detaching from their bolts. He saw heavy weights plummeting from pulleys, falling with terrifying slowness. A bluish electrical wave spread across the floor, and the vision became a frozen tableau. Students, previously focused and sweaty, turned into statues, trapped under twisted piles of metal. Sophia's 24, dance student, slender and energetic, contagious laugh, as she trained near the cable machines, froze in terror. Marcus's 35, businessman, burly and focused, silent determination, as he bench pressed, twisted into a silent scream. The metallic scent of burnt ozone and cold sweat filled his nostrils, and the dense air of the gym suddenly felt cold and heavy, laden with the premonition of death. The vision lasted only an instant, a vivid and grotesque flash, but it imprinted itself on Diego's mind with terrifying clarity. He let out a soundless gasp, the image dissipating as quickly as it appeared, leaving him breathless, pale, and his heart pounding against his ribs. He couldn't ignore it. He knew. It was a premonition. The real world seemed a distorted blur after the vision. The gym's loud music, the laughter, and the clinking of weights now sounded like a macabre prelude, each sound a reminder of what he had witnessed in his mind. Diego forced a smile for the camera, his hands trembling slightly as he apologized and abruptly ended the live stream. Technical issues, everyone. Urgent maintenance at the gym. Class is canceled for today. He stammered, cold sweat trickling down his neck. His online students, accustomed to his punctuality and perfectionism, flooded the chat with questions. What happened, Diego? Are you okay? What kind of maintenance? Are classes on tomorrow? But Diego couldn't explain. How could he tell them he had just seen the mass death of his most dedicated clients, crushed and electrocuted? He quickly walked to the reception desk, where young and cheerful Chloe, 22, gym receptionist, colorful hair and infectious smile, always chewing gum and with an attentive gaze, looked at him with a mix of curiosity and concern. Diego, are you all right? You look pale. And canceling all classes? The boss is going to flip out. Diego forced a more convincing smile, trying to appear calm, but his voice came out a little higher pitched than usual. Yes, Chloe. Just a serious issue with the main ventilation system. Something with the wiring. I need you to cancel all classes for the day and notify everyone about the maintenance. No one enters today, okay? Say it's a safety concern. Chloe frowned, surprised, but nodded, picking up the phone. All right, Diego. I'll take care of it. But ventilation? The air conditioning seems fine, even a bit chilly. Diego felt a shiver. He had lied, and his lie sounded hollow even to himself. The scent of gym disinfectant, once comforting and familiar, now carried a funereal tone, as if hiding something far darker. As he watched students being notified and leaving the premises, some grumbling, others just confused, Diego felt a temporary, almost dizzying relief. He had saved them. He had cheated fate, at least for a day. But a strange sensation lingered, like a distant echo. The relief was hollow, as if he had only postponed the inevitable, transferring the trap from one place to another. The Santa Monica sky, usually a vibrant and inviting blue, seemed grayer, foreshadowing a storm that wouldn't come from the weather. He convinced himself he needed fresh air to get out of that place that suddenly felt like a coffin. He left the gym, feeling the Californian sun on his skin, but unable to shake off the cold he still felt inside. The world outside seemed sharper, but also more dangerous, as if every element could turn against him. The days that followed were a bizarre mix of paranoia and a false sense of security. Diego spent hours checking local news, scouring portals in Los Angeles and neighboring cities, hoping for any mention of gym accidents, but found nothing. What was a relief quickly turned into a silent, almost whispering dread. He tried to resume his routine, but the image of the premonition replayed in his mind, in intermittent flashes, stealing his sleep and appetite. The smell of ozone and burnt metal seemed to be ingrained in his clothes, on his skin, even after long showers. Then, the first message arrived. Not in a news report, but in a WhatsApp group of his most dedicated students, a group he had created himself for workout tips. The notification vibrated on his wrist like an electric shock. He opened it, hands trembling. Terrible news, everyone. Sophia ... She died. Bizarre accident at home during her workout. Diego's stomach clenched, a wave of nausea hitting him. Sophia, the dance student he had seen dead in the premonition, her young face contorted in terror. She wasn't at the gym, but her death had occurred during a home workout. The message description was vague, almost incomprehensible. Makeshift home equipment, an improvised bench press bar, had inexplicably given way, crushing her. Diego recalled the vivid vision, a bench press bar coming loose and crushing. It hadn't been an electrocution or falling heavy equipment at the gym, but the crushing was there, indirectly, more cruel than anything he could have imagined. No, it couldn't be, he murmured into the emptiness of his apartment, trying to convince himself. A coincidence, he tried to rationalize, an isolated event. But the seed of doubt, cold and persistent, had been planted and was growing rapidly. He smelled the metallic scent in the air, even though he was in his clean, airy Venice Beach apartment with the faint aroma of incense he always burned. The vibrant sun streaming through the window couldn't warm the cold in his chest. The city of Los Angeles, once a playground of possibilities and dreams, now seemed a labyrinth of invisible traps and premonitions that adapted. Days later, as Diego tried to compose himself, another shocking message. Marcus, the determined businessman who trained with almost military discipline. Guys, Marcus ... It's unbelievable. He was bench pressing at home, alone, as usual. Witnesses said the bar slipped and he choked on his own tongue. Died on the spot, asphyxiated. Diego's world spun. The sounds of the street became muffled. The bench press bar. Again. The crushing. In an even more bizarre and unexpected way. A type of asphyxiation that echoed the inability to breathe he had felt in the premonition. The grotesque and improbable manner of Marcus's death, such a strong and careful man, echoed the randomness and violence of his premonition, which seemed to reconfigure itself to reach its victims. He replayed the scene in his mind, Sophia's and Marcus's faces frozen in terror. It hadn't been the building, but the event itself. The premonition was real, and death was reaching those he thought he had saved, circumventing his efforts. The air in his apartment felt heavy, almost unbreathable. He felt panic swelling in his chest, a chilling despair that made him sweat cold even in an air-conditioned environment. There was no escape. Fate had found a new path to its victims, a more tortuous and cruel one. The game had changed, and he didn't know the new rules, but he felt he was the next to be hunted. With each notification of a bizarre death, Diego felt the knot in his stomach tightening to the point of pain. He tried to connect the dots, to find a pattern in the deaths, the equipment, the circumstances, the time, but the deaths seemed random in their form, though interconnected by the specter of the premonition and the home workout. At each virtual funeral, he couldn't attend in person. The weight of guilt was overwhelming. The air grew heavier. His muscles, once sources of pride and strength that he proudly displayed on his social media, felt heavy and useless like lead. The ambient temperature in his apartment seemed to drop a few degrees whenever a new tragedy was announced, bringing a chill that even the thickest wool couldn't ward off. He isolated himself in his apartment, curtains drawn, the Venice Beach sunlight, which once invited him to the beach and outdoor life, now seeming an affront. The sound of the Pacific waves, once relaxing and therapeutic, now seemed a constant murmur of condemnation, a silent lament. The scent of sea salt mingled with an imaginary odor of sweat and metal, an olfactory ghost of the deaths that haunted him. Diego barely ate, barely slept, and every external noise made him jump. The sound of a car passing on the street, a neighbor's dog barking, the wind hitting the window, the creak of a floorboard upstairs. Everything was a potential harbinger of disaster, a sign that his turn was approaching. The pressure was unbearable. His friends and social media followers began to notice his disappearance. Worried messages flooded his direct messages. "Diego, are you okay? Miss your lives. You disappeared, man. Send news. Hope you're all right. We miss you at the gym." He ignored most, responding only with vague excuses about stress and needing some time for myself. The irony was cruel, almost comical. He, the lifestyle influencer who promoted health and well-being, discipline and mental strength, was disintegrating, a ghost of himself, trapped in his own mind. One night, while trying to meditate, a practice he once taught with passion and conviction, but which now seemed useless, an image surfaced in his mind. The bench press at Iron Core Gym. Not the scene of the massacre, but the empty bench at night under the cold light of motion sensors. He felt an irresistible urge to go there. It was madness, he knew, pure madness. But the gym, which was once the epicenter of his dread and premonition, now called to him like a macabre lighthouse, a promise of answers or a final confrontation. Perhaps, he thought with a twisted pang of hope, if he returned to the place of the original premonition, he could understand. Or perhaps, just perhaps, fate still had a final confrontation reserved for him there, where it all began. He stood up, his body aching from inactivity and tension, every muscle complaining. The clock showed almost midnight. The streets of Santa Monica were silent, establishments closed, city lights twinkling in the distance, but the night seemed full of omens, of whispers and shadows. The damp, salty night air stung his skin, and he could smell the diesel from the night garbage trucks. Diego felt he was walking towards a precipice, each step an inexorable descent, but morbid curiosity and a desperate need for answers were stronger than his fear, propelling him into the unknown. The Iron Core Gym was plunged into oppressive darkness when Diego arrived, the streetlights barely reaching the mirrored windows, reflecting only distorted silhouettes. He used his access key, the click of the lock echoing terrifyingly in the night silence, a sound amplified by the tension in his ears. The familiar scent of rubber, metal, and sweat lingered, impregnated in the walls and equipment. But now it was mixed with an odor of mold and stagnation, as if the air hadn't been refreshed since the day of his premonition, or as if something was decaying there. The internal temperature was cold and damp, and each of his footsteps seemed amplified in the echoing main hall, as if he were walking on a drum. The weight machines, once vibrant with human energy and gleaming from constant use, were now dark, silent forms, like skeletons of machines awaiting their next meal, silhouettes of a tragedy that almost occurred. Diego turned on the main lights, and the sudden glare revealed the familiar disorder of daily life, but amplified by the nocturnal quiet. Scattered weights, Forgotten towels on benches, empty water bottles rolling on the floor. He walked slowly, his eyes scanning every corner, every machine, as if searching for a clue, a sign. A chilling sensation that he was being watched made him shiver, the hairs on his arms standing on end. He reached the free weights area, his heart pounding erratically. There, the bench press stood out, solitary and imposing under the cold light, a fatal attraction that pulled him in. Diego hesitated, his heart hammering in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. The bench press, Sofia and Marcus. He felt a chill so intense that his teeth chattered uncontrollably, and a shiver ran down his spine to his neck. He approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the black leather upholstery, as if expecting it to move. And then he saw it. It wasn't a stain, nor a superficial scratch. Roughly and deeply carved into the upholstery, as if done with a knife or a sharp, hot object, was his name, in an uneven and terrifying script. Diego. And directly below it, a date, written with the same brutality, leaving a visible furrow. July 27th, 2025. The air thinned in his lungs, and he felt his throat close. The next day. Today was July 26th. Tomorrow. The date of his final encounter with fate, carved for him to see. The metallic smell of burnt metal, the same nauseating smell from his premonition, seemed to intensify, mixing with the odor of rubber and sweat, forming an oppressive cloud. He touched the carved letters, feeling their depth and rough texture, almost like a wound. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a coincidence. Death had carved his name, its own final warning, a cruel invitation to the end. The suspense grew to an unbearable, almost crushing climax. Diego was face to face with his own end, a scheduled meeting, and he was the only guest. Diego's blood ran cold, turning to sleet in his veins. The letters in the date, brutal in their clarity, seemed to scream in his mind, a chorus of distorted voices. He recoiled from the bench press as if he had received a high-voltage shock, the air leaving his lungs, a sensation of drowning on dry land. The silence of the gym was now heavy, laden with the promise of an inevitable fate. He could smell ozone and sweat, mixed with a new scent, that of his own fear, dense and metallic. The darkness outside the gym seemed to extend inward, swallowing any remnant of hope or logic. His mind raced for explanations, an escape, anything. Who? How? Chloe? A disgruntled ex-student playing a morbid prank. But the letters looked ancient, as if they had been carved long ago, waiting for him, an ancestral record of his demise. A trap. He tried to rationalize, but panic prevented him, the gears of his brain spinning in vain. The premonition. The deaths of Sofia and Marcus, so unexpected and bizarre, yet so linked to his vision. And now, his name with tomorrow's date. He was caught in a web that he, unknowingly, had woven with his attempts to save others. He ran out of the gym, the lights automatically dimming behind him, plunging the interior into complete darkness. The pre-dawn air, previously cold, now seemed to burn his lungs with every forced breath. He drove aimlessly through the empty streets of Santa Monica, the dark palm trees becoming eerie silhouettes against the night sky, like skeletal fingers pointing at him. At every traffic light, every corner, he expected the worst. For a tire to blow out, for a pole to fall on his car, for the steering bar to snap, sending him into a fatal accident. He arrived at his apartment, double-locked the door, and leaned against it, panting, his heart still beating like a war drum. The scent of salt and sea, so common in Venice Beach, no longer comforted him. It seemed a reminder of the vast, indifferent ocean that would swallow everything. He collapsed onto the couch, exhausted, his mind racing, replaying the image of the engraved bench in an infinite loop. What to do? Run? Where to? Death seemed to be one step ahead of him, no matter how fast he ran or where he hid. He tried to call friends, but the clock read 3 a.m., Who would believe his story? He was a lifestyle influencer, known for his positivity and insane workouts, not a psychic or a paranoid madman. He thought about calling the police, but what would he say? My aim is carved on a bench press. I think I'm going to die tomorrow. They'd commit him, thinking he was insane. Diego spent the rest of the night awake, every shadow and every noise startling him, every creak of the wood, every sound of the wind becoming a harbinger of his imminent death. The sound of the clock, tick-tock, tick-tock, felt like a countdown, each second an eternity. The sun rose, casting golden rays through the gap in the curtains, painting the room with a soft light. July 27th. He had survived the night. But the day was just beginning. He could smell the coffee his neighbors were brewing, a scent of normalcy that sharply contrasted with the terror in his heart. The trap was set, and he was the prey. Where, when, and how was the only remaining question.